Hello, my name is Tim Musso. I'm an artist, a professor at La Sierra University in Riverside, California. And I am delighted to be here today. I got to attend the symposium last year remotely, but it's nice to be here in Escalante today. The, um, the title of my talk is Visual Investigation as a Tool for Understanding and Storytelling. And I want to share with you my experience as an artist and using um, this tool in my own work and the process of my own work and what I hope to do in the future as it relates to the watershed here in Escalante. Last spring, I was fortunate to have a sabbatical from my teaching post, and I coordinated and connected with the partners for an artist in residence that lasted 10 weeks. And it was during this time that I was able to connect with a lot of different people thanks to our partnership and learn a lot more about the monument, which will become the source material and the base of knowledge that I will move forward with in the coming years. But why does Escalante matter to me? I want to tell you this story because I think it's important to know where people come from and why they care about things. I've been fortunate to spend 100 plus nights over the last decade exploring the Colorado Plateau. And I am not from Utah. I'm actually from California. I grew up on the American River, on the Divide, it was called, because it was between the Middle and South Fork. And both these rivers connect to the Sacramento and flow out San Francisco Bay. It was a childhood in a remote area on the west slope of the Sierra Nevada, with lots of time to explore watersheds and mountains and everything else. But one of the things that I grew up with and was ever present was this realization that the environmental destruction lasts. So the hydraulic or placer mining from the 1850s is still visible, very much so, in the American River basin. And then, of course, like Escalante and all the logging in its past history, I grew up with a lot of logging in my area too. And then, of course, recently we've had these fires because of the forest mismanagement for 100 plus years. So that burned 14 miles, I think, of the Rubicon River drainage near where I grew up in one evening. So here's an artwork I made in response to that. It's a woodcut print at the top center. I got to learn more about how all these watersheds connect when I read this book when I was in high school. And then ultimately, I moved down to college in Southern California, and I currently live along the Santa Ana River on the bottom of the screen. That's the river that Riverside is named after. And what's interesting, and why I'm telling you all of this, is that Riverside connects directly to Escalante via the Colorado River. And one of the terminal points in the river is Lake Matthews Reservoir, which is a mile from where I live, and that's the source of my drinking water. So that very real connection, I think, is interesting. But now I want to shift gears, having given you some background in why I'm interested in Escalante. Art in a largely scientific-based symposium, I think, is really important. And we share so much science and art historically and up to this day. And the thing that I think is really interesting is that both art and science are fundamentally concerned with exploration and discovery of the unknown. And the process really is, inquiry, gain knowledge, share, and connect. That's the end goal, right? And I think that's what's, for me as the artist, is really important, is that end goal of connection. Because we are the storytelling animal, and we do relate a point of view, and our story comes from our experience. Another thing that art and science connect with and share is sharing documentation methods, whether it's photographing, drawing, or writing. I try to be very hyper conscious of which one I pick. If I just need to record something for very quick reference, I'll use a photograph. If I actually want to see it, then I'm going to draw it, and that takes time. And I think it's in that time that you really come to understand something. And someone who did this a lot, who's a hero of mine, is Ernst Haeckel, who bridged that science and art. And he spent a lot of time looking through microscopes at water from different oceans and drawing what he found on this microscopic level in these beautiful symmetrical compositions. And I really thought that was such a beautiful way that he bridged that gap, and I wanted to make an homage to him. So many years ago, I made this sketch. Here I am on the west slope of the Sierra Nevada. At this point, I was doing a lot of artwork about trees, and so I was paying attention to trees and thinking about trees and thinking, how could I take things in my environment to pay homage to Haeckel? And so I created this final drawing on the right. You can see the initial sketch on the left. It's a 2-color woodblock print with all the things that I had observed. And here's a close-up detail. And then here you can see the structural reference that I'm using. But moving forward, I want to talk a little bit more about my creative process, because I think there's a lot of overlap between the sciences and the art world. And I think both of them start off with curiosity. And it's this process that ends with connecting with people, and it endlessly cycles. And right now I'm in a cycle of it, coming towards I'm at kind of this stage right now. I'll get to that at the end of the talk. But I want to talk about my most recent project. It was a 3-year project. I illustrated and wrote and designed this picture book published in 2023. And it was an important project to me because it was my first time working in a narrative format versus just a one-off singular object that was made and showed in a museum. But the creative process starts with curiosity. Then you always got to take some risk. So I had an interest in Alaska since I've been very young. I've only been there twice. But when I got the chance to float down the Connecticut River in the Brooks Range, I took it. And there's always a little bit of risk when you're landing in bush plains and navigating a river so far from hospitals and roads. But ultimately, up in the Brooks Range, I'm paying attention. I'm discovering things. One of the things I discovered, which I knew nothing about, was the Arctic tern. And to me, it was the most interesting thing I saw on that trip, even more so than the grizzlies and the wolves and everything else. So while I'm up there in the Brooks Range, I'm sketching and I'm drawing. And then little did I know at the time that these would become references to the book project later on. I'm also doing rubbings of interesting textures. I'm taking photographs of multiple angles of things that I want to reference in the future. And all of those represent an accumulation of experience. And then the next step in the creative process is to learn from the experts, right? So when I got back to Los Angeles, I went to Occidental College and talked to the ornithologist here and got the occasion to draw and photograph and observe the Arctic tern in a way that I would not be able to do in a natural environment. And so that really sort of helped inform what I call informed intuition, which I think is a key element in telling a story visually. The way that I told this story was through a year in the life of the tern, and using all my reference material from Alaska, I made this sketch right here. My medium is relief printing, and I like making multiples because you can show the work at multiple different locations at the same time, and multiple people can own your work and enjoy your work at the same time. So in this scene, I'm pulling the print off the printing press. This is some whales up in Alaska. And this is the image I showed you earlier, the sketch of. So this is the finished print. We've got the grizzlies, we've got the river, and we've got the birds. And then here it is. I colorized it, added the story, and then added the graphics that tell the story visually through the map. And then I thought it'd be nice to show the original sketch and then the final sketch. But ultimately, all of this is to connect with people, right? We're the storytelling animal, and whether you're telling this story like through a book with a family in a living room or telling this story, this is me reading the book to first graders, over the years and over time, that is what's become most interesting to me. And that's what I'm hoping to do moving forward with the Escalante watershed. And I want to talk a little bit about that. So like I said, this was a 10-week sabbatical. The partners helped introduce me to many interesting people who I was able to join in the field. You can see here that I put this in my statement before I began this residency, that I wanted to connect with experts and spend time in the field and make sketches, hopefully into a book of illustrations. But I'd love to share some images from my sketchbook. I titled it An Occasion to Observe and Connect. And here you can see I filled up 2 sketchbooks. About half the time I was by myself, and half the time I was with different people. And lots of walking, lots of drawing. I wanted to share something that I wrote out in the field. The primary function of observational drawing is to slow down and actually spend time seeing something. The side effect of this process is that there is a sketch, when in reality, what is most significant is a transformation of perception. I want to show you, I'm just using really simple tools, white charcoal and a black pen. And this is a drawing I made in 50 Mile Canyon. And just to reiterate that passage I read, to me what was important was really trying to understand, right, the breakdown of this arch, its relationship to Lake Powell. And to do so, I could have used a photograph, but I really wanted to see. And so I spent the 30 minutes or 40 minutes making this drawing and being present. And I had that change of perception that happened because I was drawing in this method. And as I continued throughout the 10 weeks, I was just drawing whatever was interesting to me. And all of that now is becoming reference material for some artwork that I'm currently making. And one of the things that was nice about collaborating with the partners was connecting with people. And so I got to volunteer a couple days with Alex and Kristen, working on what I understand is a many decades long effort with thousands of people working on the Russian olive. And so I got to play a very, very small part, but it was nice to understand how that is being, how that problem is being tackled. And of course, I'm making sketches. I also got to work in the field with Alan and Katya, looking at fossils, and got to draw this Tyrannosaur humerus that we found. That was my first time on a paleontological dig. And yeah, it was more deeper understanding of this place. And there's many other people I met. I don't have time to talk about everybody, but they all helped inform my current understanding. After 59 days out of my 10 weeks, I realized the story that I wanted to tell. But that came out of a decade plus of being in the monument and spending time there. So it's all part of that creative process I talked about. So towards the end of my sabbatical and my residency, I started writing the story and rearranging it here to get the order right. And I'm currently working on it. I just finished the first sketch from what I hope is a series of 20 images. And I made a distinct choice to move from working in wood and linoleum to working with stone. And that was really just a conceptual choice because I feel like the Colorado Plateau is primarily about stone, and that seems like the best medium. When I got back to Riverside after my 10 weeks this last spring, I was able to obtain a press that I could use to do this process. And I was anticipating this. This is the last page of my sketchbook. This is a lithocrayon that's used for drawing on stone. And here's the press. Had to get it to the university, had to replace the motor with a handheld crank. And I would love to show you a 3-minute video that shows me on one of the first drawings. Here we go. Lithography is such a wonderful medium. The texture of the limestone and the way the drawing material interacts, it's unlike anything else that I've done. You can see the red is iron oxide here, and that does not print in the final stage. So I do my sketch with iron oxide, and then I kind of have like a guideline because you can't erase when you're drawing with this material on the stone. I should mention the stone that I'm using is from Bavaria, but you can use any limestone, and you can use marble as well. The stone has to be really thick to withstand the pressure of the printing process, and that makes it a challenge to move around between the studio and the press itself. One of the things that I really enjoy is that there's a connection with trees and that's with the rosin, which you can see me here spreading the tree rosin. And then following this next step, you'll see I'm using gum arabic, which is also made from tree sap. So there's something very elemental about the working with the stone and the tree sap and the other elements. You'll see I'm working with asphaltum a little bit later, so very crude oil. At this stage, I'm putting some nitric acid in the gum arabic, and this is mixed, and then you'll see I'm adding it to the stone just in the dark areas, and that extra strength, because gum arabic's naturally acidic, but the extra strength of nitric acid helps push the grease into the stone in these areas that have a lot of drawing on top of them. If I weren't to do this step with the extra etch, those areas would just fill in black when it came to the printing process. And so what you're seeing now is basically just like the grease residue that has been driven into the stone via the gum arabic. And it needs to be resensitized, and so that's why I'm using this asphaltum to basically create like a nice greasy coating on the drawing part. And that will help when I put the oil-based ink on at the last stage of the printing. So you can see here I'm taking off the gum stencil with water. And now it's time to print. So we've got to mix up the ink, get it onto the roller. And then really the magic of lithography is this idea that oil and water don't mix. So when my assistant here is putting water onto the stone, the water is rejected by the greasy drawing, and so the water is only on the non-image area. And then that water rejects the oil-based ink that you saw me just roll on. And so you can print an infinite amount of copies, and they basically all look identical. And what's cool is that when you're done, you can just put a little bit of carborundum grit on the stone, and you grind away a few molecules of thickness of the stone, and it's ready to receive another drawing. So you could probably do 1,000 drawings on the same stone, and then you just lose a little bit of thickness. So here you can see the print coming off. It's a mirror image. And yeah, that's lithography. I'm sure it wasn't totally clear, but at least you get a sense of it. This image I drew, this is a close-up. This is the big horn next to the banks of the Escalante. This is near Stephen's Arch, and you can see the ancient drawings behind the sheep along with some lizards in the foreground. So this is one of what I hope to be 20, a suite of images. And I just want to conclude this by saying thank you. I know organizing this symposium takes a lot of work, and I want to thank all the people over the last couple of years that have helped enlighten me and teach me about the monument. So thank you very much. Thanks for asking me to speak, and stay tuned for more artwork. Here's my contact information if you have any questions. Thank you.